While Netanyahu stood at the podium declaring Israel a global superpower, air raid sirens suddenly cut through the moment. The speech stopped mid-sentence, and in that single moment, you could see the reality of the war. Not the speeches, not the headlines, but the truth. 13 days. That is how long this conflict has been running. And during those 13 days, Iran launched 6 separate waves of ballistic missiles. In a single day from the north, Hezbollah fired more than 200 rockets from Lebanon. Inside a synagogue shelter, 9 Israeli civilians were killed. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow passage where nearly 20% of the world's oil flows, was effectively shut down in just the first week. Over $11 billion were spent on military operations. Yet the prime minister leading this war held his first press conference through Zoom while his own citizens rushed underground into shelters. That is not what a fast victory looks like. And hidden inside Netanyahu's own words was an admission, one that changes how you understand everything that happened after February 28th. To understand that moment, we need to go back to the beginning of the war. In the first days of the conflict, the public was told a very specific story. Israeli officials said 300 Iranian missile launchers had been destroyed. Reports claimed Iran's missile fire rate had dropped by nearly 70%. Senior military officials said 3/4 of Iran's launch capability had been eliminated. The message was clear: overwhelming force, Iran crippled mission nearly complete. But 13 days later, Netanyahu said something very different. He told reporters Iran had buried its missile systems and nuclear facilities deep underground. And if Israel had waited just a few more months, those assets would have become, in his own words, immune to attack. Think about that word, immune. That is not the language of a leader describing a defeated enemy. That is the language of someone explaining why the enemy is still able to fight back. Because in that moment, Netanyahu admitted something important. Some Iranian capabilities still cannot be reached. The underground infrastructure survived. And the campaign has limits. Journalists noticed the contradiction immediately. His statement directly conflicted with what Israel and the United States had been saying since the first strikes. But that was not the only revealing moment. Later, in the same press conference, a reporter asked a simple question: "Can you guarantee the Iranian government will fall?" Netanyahu paused, then answered carefully. He said he could not guarantee the regime would collapse unless the Iranian people themselves rose up. Looking directly into the camera, he addressed the people of Iran. Help is on the way, but ultimately it is up to you. Think about what that means. Billions of dollars spent, thousands of airstrikes, Iran's supreme leader killed in a targeted strike, and yet the man directing the war is saying the military campaign alone cannot deliver the final result. Instead, the entire plan depends on a civilian uprising inside a country under bombardment, and that admission matters. Because before the war began, the U.S. National Intelligence Council completed a classified assessment. Their conclusion was simple: airstrikes alone would not produce regime change in Iran. The report was written in February 2026, and later intelligence reviews reached the same conclusion. The Iranian government was not collapsing, it was not fracturing, it still had control. Even a senior Israeli official privately admitted to Reuters. There was no guarantee the war would topple the government in Tehran. The intelligence community said it before the war. They repeated it during the war. And now, Netanyahu himself was saying the same thing, even if he did not frame it that way. Because after Iran's supreme leader was killed, something surprising happened. The regime did not collapse. There was no chaos, no power vacuum. Instead, within days, Iran's assembly of experts met and chose a successor, Moabba Kham, the son of the man who had just been killed. Analysts say he is even more hardline than his father. His first message was broadcast on Iranian state television. He did not appear on camera, likely for security reasons, but his message was clear. Iranian blood will be avenged, and the Strait of Hormuz will remain a weapon against the West. For as long as necessary, the regime did not break. It reorganized. Orders were given, and the missiles kept flying. One of the deadliest moments of the war happened in Beth Shemesh, just 18 miles from Jerusalem. An Iranian ballistic missile struck a communal shelter inside a synagogue. 9 civilians were killed. Dozens were injured. 2 Israeli interceptor missiles were launched to stop the attack. Both missed. At the same time, warning sirens activated too late to give residents the standard 90-second warning. Iranian ballistic missiles reach Israeli territory in about 10 minutes. Israel's defense system depends on 3 things: early detection, fast warnings, and successful interception. At Beth Shemesh, all three failed at the same time. And when that happens, shelters stop protecting people. They trap them. Meanwhile, another reporter reminded Netanyahu of something he said in 2024. He had claimed Israeli operations set Hezbollah back 20 years. The reporter asked the obvious question: if that is true, why is Hezbollah firing 200 rockets a day? Toward central Israel, Netanyahu did not answer directly. Instead, he argued that early predictions had been catastrophic. Thousands dead cities, destroyed towers collapsing in Tel Aviv. He said those disasters were prevented because Israel acted aggressively, but in defending himself, he admitted something important. Hezbollah still has the ability to attack Israel, which means the group he once said was neutralized is still launching coordinated attacks today. Battlefield data confirms it. On March 12th, Israeli forces struck Hezbollah targets in central Beirut. Beyond the areas they previously targeted, ground troops pushed deeper into southern Lebanon. Defense Minister Israel Katz warned operations could expand even further. Privately, Israeli officials say Hezbollah still holds a large arsenal and can sustain a long conflict, which means Israel is not fighting one war. It is fighting two, and neither war has a clear ending. Meanwhile, the global economy is feeling the shock. The Strait of Hormuz has been effectively closed. For nearly 2 weeks, Iran's Revolutionary Guard declared no oil would pass through the waterway and threatened to destroy any ship attempting the crossing. Since February 28th, at least 16 commercial ships have been attacked near the strait. 8 sailors have died. 1 is still missing. Nearly 150 vessels are currently stranded. Iran has also planted naval mines across the waterway. The U.S. military confirmed strikes on Iranian mine-laying vessels, but the mines are already in the water. Before the war, oil traded around $73 a barrel. Within 10 days, it passed $100. Gasoline prices in America have risen by 17%. The International Energy Agency released the largest emergency oil reserve in history, 400 million barrels. From 32 countries, Saudi Arabia rerouted shipping, and Iranian missile strikes forced the shutdown of major gas facilities in Qatar. European gas prices jumped nearly 30%. Iran's Revolutionary Guard warned oil could reach $200 a barrel. Meanwhile, the Pentagon confirmed the first 6 days of U.S. operations cost more than $11.3 billion. 7 American service members have already been killed. Iran has attacked at least 27 locations, hosting U.S. troops across the region. The U.S. Embassy compound in Kuwait was hit. British forces came under attack. Saudi Arabia intercepted 12 drones. In a single day, the UAE stopped 10 missiles and 26 drones. On the same day, this is no longer a limited conflict between Israel and Iran. It has become a regional war with global economic consequences, and politically, Netanyahu's position is weakening. A poll released during his own press conference showed him losing seats in projected elections. Part of the reason this war began was political timing. Israeli elections could happen as early as June or July. The expectation was war would unite voters and strengthen Netanyahu's position. That has not happened. His corruption trial is still ongoing, and his request for a pardon was rejected by Israel's legal authorities. Even Donald Trump, one of his closest allies, complicated the situation. Trump publicly criticized Israeli President Isaac Herzog for refusing the pardon, calling him weak and disgraceful. Netanyahu refused to respond directly, saying only the president can say whatever he wants. But Trump has also said something else. He wants the war to end soon. His question was simple: when do we stop? And that creates a problem. Netanyahu needs the war to continue long enough to strengthen his political position. Trump wants an exit as quickly as possible. Their timelines are moving in opposite directions, and the gap between them is getting wider every day. So here is the situation. 13 days into the war, Iran is still launching ballistic missiles. The government in Tehran is still standing under a new and more hardline leader. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Oil has crossed $100. Hezbollah is still firing rockets from Lebanon. Israeli ground forces are moving deeper into Lebanese territory. 7 Americans are dead, and the war has already cost over $11 billion in less than a week. Yet the central objective, the fall of the Iranian government, has not been achieved 13 days later. The missiles are still flying. The regime is still standing. And no one on any side has explained what the end of this war actually looks like. Because that is the real question now. not who wins the headlines, not whose press conference sounded stronger. But one thing, what does the exit from this war actually look like?